The words left her mouth so quietly that they almost disappeared into the warm summer breeze. Yet they struck harder than any scream ever could. Rachel stood on the sidewalk in a quiet neighborhood outside Columbus, Ohio, holding nothing but a faded canvas bag and a small envelope. Her eyes weren't filled with anger or tears anymore. They were empty, as if she had already accepted that the world had run out of places for her. When she whispered that she had nowhere left to go, I looked at her for a long moment before answering, with the only words my heart would allow. I told her to come with me. Before we continue this story, if you believe kindness can change lives, if you believe people deserve hope, forgiveness, compassion, and a second chance, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps these stories reach hearts that may need them the most. My name is Nathan, and until that afternoon I believed my own life was already complicated enough. I had recently moved back to Ohio after losing my construction job in Chicago when the company downsized. My savings were disappearing faster than I wanted to admit, and I was living in my late grandfather's small farmhouse while trying to rebuild my future. Every day I searched for work, repaired the old house one room at a time, and wondered if life would ever begin moving forward again. Meeting Rachel was never part of my plans. She had been renting a room nearby while working at a local bookstore. When the elderly homeowner unexpectedly passed away, the property was sold almost immediately. With no close relatives, very little money, and no one willing to let her stay for more than a night, she quietly packed everything she owned into one bag. Pride kept her from asking for help, until there was no pride left to protect. I happened to see her sitting alone on a bench outside the grocery store where I had stopped for coffee. Sometimes life changes because of a single sentence, spoken by a stranger. Bringing Rachel to the farmhouse was not an easy decision. The house was old, the roof leaked during heavy rain, and half the rooms still needed repairs. I worried about what neighbors might think, and she worried about becoming a burden. We agreed that she would help cook, clean, and organize the place until she found somewhere else to live. It sounded temporary. Neither of us realized that healing rarely follows the plans people make. The first few weeks were awkward. We barely knew each other, yet we shared dinners on the porch every evening. Rachel had a quiet strength that slowly revealed itself. She planted flowers beside the broken fence, cleaned my grandfather's dusty workshop, and somehow made the old house feel alive again. I spent my days repairing roofs for a local contractor who finally gave me a chance, and every evening I returned to find another small improvement waiting inside the farmhouse. It wasn't just the house that was changing. The loneliness that had followed both of us for years was beginning to fade. Then, another challenge arrived. The contractor lost an important project, and my work hours were cut in half. Bills piled up. I considered selling the farmhouse because it seemed impossible to keep it. Without telling me, Rachel began creating handmade bookmarks, journals, and painted wooden signs using leftover materials from my grandfather's workshop. She convinced a nearby cafe to display them, and to everyone's surprise, they sold quickly. Soon, local craft fairs invited her to participate, and neighbors who barely knew us started stopping by the farmhouse to place custom orders. Watching people believe in Rachel reminded me that hope spreads quietly. One act of kindness had become another, then another, until complete strangers were helping each other without expecting anything in return. The farmhouse that once echoed with silence became a place where neighbors shared meals, children laughed safely in the yard, and people who felt forgotten discovered they still mattered. Months later, Rachel received an offer to manage the very bookstore where she had once worked. The owner admired her honesty, creativity, and determination. She accepted, but she didn't move away. Instead, she chose to stay in the little farmhouse, helping me transform the old workshop into a community space where young artists and local families could gather, create, and encourage one another. If this story has touched your heart so far, please let us know by liking the video and sharing it with someone who could use a reminder that even the smallest act of kindness can change an entire life. And before we reach the ending, we'd love to hear from you in the comments. Tell us about a moment when someone gave you hope, or when you were able to give hope to someone else. Looking back now, I sometimes wonder what would have happened if I had simply walked past that grocery store bench without stopping. Maybe Rachel would have found another path. Maybe she wouldn't have. What I do know is that compassion rarely announces itself with grand speeches. More often, it arrives as a simple invitation offered at exactly the right moment. The farmhouse still stands beneath its old oak trees, stronger than before. Not because the walls were repaired, but because two broken lives discovered that home is not a place built from wood and bricks. It is built from mercy, trust, and the courage to open a door when someone believes every other door has already closed. And every time someone asks how our story began, I smile because the answer has never changed. Everything started with 5 ordinary words that carried extraordinary hope. Come with me.